It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast, talking your property news as we do 7 days a week. We've just come out of a weekend and it was a very busy weekend right around Australia. You might have ended up attending an auction, one of those open homes, maybe just the sort of talk around the dining room table as to, what your next move is going to be. And we are into another Monday grind, but definitely getting into the business end of the month. It is Monday, the 28th day of October. Just a reminder, if you would like to join the conversation, you can do that. Our email address, and I know if you've been listening for a while, you will know the email address, but the reason I give it out is we've got new listeners all the time. So that email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Well, right now it's time to go to Geelong because we're going to be talking and catching up with Josh Malcom. He's just one of so many people that have seen the light moving out of Melbourne into Geelong, getting more bang for the dollar. Welcome into the Real Estate Breakfast this morning, Josh.
Oh, thanks for having me.
As I say, you're one of these people that decided, no, hang on, I think I can get a little bit better lifestyle, a little bit cheaper in one of the suburbs of Geelong. So just first off, set that up for us, Josh, the rationale, the thinking in terms of what made you move.
Being an architect myself, I, obviously am pretty passionate about design. A lot of my own personal clients, $15 million 2-rack homes. And realistically, I wasn't able to achieve the same home at this sort of first home buyer stage. And so I sort of started to look at areas that I could afford in Melbourne that were going to fit my budget, but still gave me, say, for example, a little bit of land, which is something that I really value, gardening and growing veggies. Any area that seemed affordable to me in the surrounding Melbourne areas just had no lifestyle. I just, saw a little bit more for myself. So I started casting out my net a little bit wider and started looking down Geelong way. Initially, I drove down. I sort of was like, I don't really think it's for me. And then started looking at realestate.com and started finding properties that really caught my attention, 80s homes, 70s homes, like that real mid-century modern style, which is definitely my favorite. And then just started seeing properties. I was like, this is doable. So I went to a few auctions and obviously missed out. Property prices were rising a lot at that time, just sort of early COVID days. And then I ended up finding a property that just ticked every box. And I thought, I'm going to make this a bit of a decision. Didn't really know anything about the area. It was during COVID, so I actually only ever visited the home once. It was a 5-bed house, had a huge block of land and needed a lot of work, which was something that I was pretty excited about. Moved down. So bought the house 2 months later, settled, moved in and didn't know the beauty of what the area actually was going to hold. It turns out that I'm 10 minutes to wineries on the Bellarine Peninsula. I'm 10 minutes to Ocean Grove beaches and Barwon Heads. I'm 10 minutes to the centre of Geelong. I'm 10 minutes to the other side. So it really ended up being not only an incredible investment opportunity for property prices for what I could get for my money, but it ended up being an incredible lifestyle change. I guess was a little bit of a fluke, but it's been one of the best things I've ever experienced.
Gee, that's interesting because you're talking at the time of COVID and the property prices, of course, have moved on since then. So it has no doubt ended up being a fantastic investment for you. Little bit of blind faith moving out of Melbourne. As you say, you didn't fully appreciate what the area had. You said that you got a little bit of land with us. So how big is the property in terms of land size?
So the land size is about 800 square, which, it's definitely larger than, say, the new developments being built at the moment. But I think the actual orientation of the block, it's at the end of a cul-de-sac. So it's this very long kind of kite-shaped block with quite a long house on it. So it really then lends itself to incredible opportunities gardening-wise. I've probably got about 7 outdoor areas that I've kind of zoned off into different areas.
So you like doing the gardening. You got the veggie patch in by the sound of it. It sounds like you want to be a little bit self-sufficient.
Yeah. But my friends call me the Noni Hazelhurst of the Bellarine from Better Homes and Gardens, which was like an Australian show we all grew up with. But yeah, I love being self-sufficient. I love being able to just grow my own veggies. And it's sort of the simple life without owning a property. You know, I'm still a single guy. So I feel like that's a big responsibility for one person. So it kind of gives me the best of both worlds.
All right, it is a Monday. We are talking to Josh Malcom in his new digs there in Geelong. We'll come back and we'll talk more after this.
Why pay a premium for advertising that's too expensive? Our listeners are actively engaged in the real estate market. Get your message directly into the ears that can influence your business.
As you say, the portion of home loans that are actually seeing late payments remains very, very low. Overall, the portion of home loans where payments are more than 90 days past due is sitting at just 1%.
I think that properties, if they are presented beautifully without the clowning around, they're going to sell anyway.
Look, I think the way that agents now are pushing homes, yes, they're doing stories and reels. The videos that they're capturing are caught in the moment. They are purposefully meant to be lo-fi.
I started selling on the 1st of January, all my properties this year, by the open platform, which has made a huge difference, and the buyers have loved it because it gives them full transparency.
We very much believe that. We are pretty competitively priced compared to Sydney. A lot of buyers, look, I'm selling probably 75 to 80% of our buyers are from the Sydney metro area.
From powerful and up-to-date news to professional real estate experts with the latest property trends on the Real Estate Podcast.
It is a Real Estate Monday, the 28th day, getting towards the end of the month, as I mentioned. And we're talking to Josh, who made this move from Melbourne into Geelong. Josh, got to ask you about your friends, other people around your same age, people that haven't managed to get into their first property. It's becoming later and later, well into people's 30s, start of their 40s even, to buy their first property, which for my generation just wasn't a thing. We were getting into property in our 20s. I can't imagine sort of getting in at a later age. So you no doubt have other friends that are struggling.
Oh, for sure. I think even for myself, like I was always in apartments, obviously living in Melbourne, and I was craving land, so I could actually start doing these hobbies that I always had watched on YouTube and whatnot. And I've got a lot of other friends who are in the same boat. And unfortunately, like if they're not willing to sacrifice on the sort of city lifestyle that they require, then they are having to buy apartments. So, they're late 30s and they're only being able to buy their first 1-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom apartment, wanting to have a couple of kids in there, or now being pregnant, and then they're sort of having to sell pretty quickly to then buy something a little bit bigger, or they end up selling their apartment and then just going to have to rent a home of a decent size for them and their young family.
Yeah, that's very, very tough. If you don't have your home in place and secure, you end up having children and you are renting. You are really on the back foot, and particularly in this economy where everything is just so expensive. I do want to ask you this, which is something we've talked about a number of times, which has been reported in various places, and that is millennials wanting to have the same lifestyle as their parents for their first home. They just want to sort of jump ahead of the queue. Is that a thing? Is that something that you've sort of experienced with people that you know?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's it's not an ego thing, or I think it's actually just the desire to have a home that you live in and it's yours. I mean, I know for myself, you almost move every year when you're renting because you're having to move to a different area, or rent gets too expensive. You have to go to another area, or you're sick of housemates, or, so I think there's almost that unsettling feeling that you have. So I guess that's where the craving comes for your own home. But then with that, obviously, we look at our parents and go, oh, you had a beautiful 4-bedroom home with 2 bathrooms and a big backyard. And then you compare to what we would now get, which is a 1-bed apartment for the, 10 times more price.
And in terms of percentage with your friends, with the mum and dad bank, what do you think that sort of comes out at with assistance from parents?
I think most of my friends have been able to do it on their own, which has been, something to be really proud of. I know they've worked hard and saved for years to be able to do that. I think most parents would be there to help if they needed to. But yeah, I would say most of my friends have luckily been able to do it on their own.
And you said that you're an architect. So how long did it take you to save up for your deposit?
So I seriously started saving when just before I turned 30. I had a bit of a goal, like by 30, I wanted to have my own place. And then that was obviously with a partner. We obviously broke up. And then I thought, well, I don't want to be tied to someone else in this huge investment. I'd rather do it myself. So I think it then took me another year, a lot of sacrifice. I mean, I think that's the main thing our generation really has to realize is if you want something, you've got to really cut back on your everyday spendings and do side hustles. And, I was working full time and was doing a side hustle business as well.
Do you find that people similar to you, they might have had a relationship and they come out of the relationship and they say, well, hang on, what am I doing here? Is this a little bit dangerous going into property with somebody I'm not married to, where I've got to, if something goes wrong, I've got to split 50% of the property? Is that a consideration, do you think, in today's times that we live in?
I think it's like naively, probably not, but I do know friends that are now in that situation and they're still having to live with their ex-partner a year on because they have no other option of getting out of their mortgage and their home they're in. Even 2 years, 3 years on, they're still having to live together because they can't afford to get out because then they both can't afford to have anything themselves, separately. So I think it's something to definitely consider when you're going into these things. But at the same time, to service a mortgage on your own is really, can be quite stressful.
Yes, being trapped into that sort of relationship housing arrangement, that is affecting thousands and thousands of couples up and down Australia. And no doubt that is, I guess, very much an anxiety trigger point. Now, you mentioned that you are an architect. You're doing some work for the super rich. Do you call them super rich in Toorak? I suppose so. Designing some of these mansions.
Yeah, I mean, I just call them friends, but it's been I've obviously got a really diverse portfolio range of clients, but it's been really fascinating to deal with like super wealthy where they're doing $15 million builds or, $2 million renovation down to clients that are, it's their first home and they've got $100,000 to renovate, their sort of, I guess, idealistically dream home. It's a very interesting audience to sort of deal with. I think what's more fascinating is the clients in Toorak that are my clients are all started just with nothing. They didn't have help. They bought a house in a really backward area, property increased, maybe 10%. They were able to do a little renovation on it. They then sold it. Then they bought the next one, the next one, the next one. So they've kind of worked their way up to these big homes. And that, I guess, being surrounded by that has definitely encouraged me as well.
Yeah, well, that is something to shoot for. It sounds like you've got it all going on. Like you're self-employed, you've got this property that you're developing. You might be in that property for a number of years by the sound of things.
Yeah, I'm actually, my house is actually for sale. So I finished the reno.
Oh, you finished? Okay.
Yeah, I finished the reno in June. I did a full gut myself, built everything myself, even the kitchen and whatnot. And and had the legal, electricians, plumbers, people I needed to have legally do things. And just put on the market. So the plan is then obviously to do it again at a next property.
Well, good luck with all of that, Josh, and thank you so much for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
If you're confused about the property market, don't be. Unlock and educate yourself with the latest trending analysis and interviews. We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.